What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Sit Down Saturday, where I don't reply to comments, just as a heads up. Today we're going to be talking about the IDW Transformers Reboot, what it means, is it good, is it bad, what is the state of IDW, a brief history, how to go about bringing yourself up to date with it, and what we'd like to see in the reboot. So let's first start with the news of it. So this summer, the IDW Transformers will move into the Unicron miniseries, which ultimately will be the end of the IDW Transformers universe, as we know it currently, and maybe how we've always known it. To be clear, James Roberts, the writer of More Than Meets the Eye and Now Lost Light, says the current IDW G1 continuity will end with Unicron number 6 in September of this year. The books are going to be released bi-weekly, which is crazy. And he tries to put fanboy fears at ease by saying there's been plenty of time to plan for the end. It's proper, unrushed, and wrapped up. He says Lost Light will end in the way I always intended More Than Meets the Eye to end, and I'm pleased to say that. So to be clear, it all ends with the Optimus Prime book number 25 in September, the Lost Light book number 25 in September, and the Unicron miniseries number 6 in September. And with those three books wrapping up, that will conclude the IDW universe as we've known it. So I always get a lot of questions about the IDW comics on this channel. Maybe because I'm outspoken about my love for a large majority of them. Maybe because of the comic breakdowns I've done, which I have another one coming. But I always get a lot. So I've said this before, but for those who are new and are trying to jump into the books, I'm going to tell you the best way to collect and read them. And that is in these oversized hardcover editions titled Transformers the IDW Collection. There's 8 volumes in Phase 1, and as you can see, I'm a little behind in collecting the Phase 2 volumes. The nice thing about this is that when the IDW stuff first started, I don't think continuity within the books were a major idea. So what they tried to do was tie them all together and put them in somewhat of an easy-to-read chronological order for you, the consumer, to read, appreciate, and kind of understand the timeline of events. It's extremely user-friendly, it's all-encompassing, and it looks great on a shelf. It's a classy set. You can tell by the little ribbons you can use as bookmarks. Always a fan. Without going into spoilers, there's a major event at the end of Volume 8 of Phase 1. That event ultimately brings the Cybertron War to an end, which I think is brilliant. Why? Because, in my opinion, the key to comics is always doing what can't be done. What can't you do with Spider-Man? You can't give away his secret identity. So what do? In Civil War, we give away his secret identity. What can't you do with Superman? Kill him. So what do? We kill him. What can we never do with Wolverine? Take his metal bones away. So what do? We take his metal bones away. What can you never do with Batman? With him. Never with Batman. Now, do we ultimately always find a way to kind of make things right? Of course. But it doesn't mean that the ride isn't fun as long as we're on it. So what I love so much about Phase 2, I could go on and on and on about. But I'm going to try to wrap it up in quick points that hopefully will make sense to you. Without the Autobot-Decepticon War, what is Transformers as a property? Roberts and Barber go into deconstructing that idea. Transformers, in and of itself, is a war of Autobots against Decepticons over resources for the planet of Cybertron. That's it. That's what that franchise is. If you take that away, what does that franchise become? And in these books, you get that answer. Honestly, it's probably the most thought-provoking and emotionally engaging content we've ever gotten from Transformers ever. Ever? Ever. But ever, definitely ever. What else did they do? They made you care about characters that no one in the history of the fandom has ever cared about before, ever. Ever, 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 ever. Some of those characters that you just saw, I barely knew their names before reading these books. And after reading these books, some of them have become my favorite characters in Transformers. A lot of evers, I feel like, in this video. What else did they do? Aside from reinventing old characters, introduce new characters that have now become extremely beloved. And on top of that, some of those characters, for instance the DJD, the Decepticon Justice Division, have now built the world even larger and complicated the fairly black and white factions that we've always known. A lot of those characters now feel like they've been part of the franchise forever, which is to say, even part of G1. Even though they never were. And lastly, they took a franchise whose major identity is a very black and white construct. Good versus evil. Decepticons versus Autobots. Grabbed the widest paintbrush they could find and threw a huge gradient of gray across it. Some good guys aren't as good as they've always seemed. And even though they're doing what they think is best for the cause, can have fairly nefarious actions. Some characters aren't as bad as they've always seen and have just allowed their fight to overshadow what they're actually fighting for. Now, the beginning of Phase 2 led up to a major event called Dark Cybertron, which I've already covered on this channel. And honestly, after Dark Cybertron, the road got a little bit rockier. The stories weren't quite as page-for-page engaging as perhaps they once were. A large part of that is because in Phase 2, you had this adventure exploration mission with More Than Meets the Eye, backlit by this very sociological political drama that was taking place on Cybertron and Robots in Disguise. And those two elements working in concert created, in my opinion, the most engaging Transformer material ever produced. After Dark Cybertron, Robots in Disguise kind of got turned into Combiner Wars, and that just reeked of almost like a product placement because it was coinciding with the toy line by the same title. A lot of the character designs changed in order to match the toys. It seemed like someone was muddying the waters on a corporate level. And without those two books working together, the overall content suffered. Eventually, by I think issue 50 of More Than Meets the Eye, a lot got wrapped up, but arguably too much. There were character deaths, and arcs, and conclusions that seemed a little too abrupt for everything invested into them. Which is why it is nice to hear that all of this with Unicron has been pre-planned. But then the Lost Light started, and I'll be honest, I haven't read it all. I got the first trade, I'm still struggling to make my way through it. I hear that it does improve, I just don't find the stories as emotionally or even content-wise exciting. But being honest, I haven't read them all, so I'm not passing judgment on the whole line. But I say all that to say this. I love the IDW Transformers universe. I think it's probably the best fiction we've ever got from Transformers in 30-some years. However, I do think it's time to wrap it up. Die a hero, or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. And that's not to say that all of IDW has been great. The bit with the Avengers was especially ridiculous. But overall, for many years, they have produced a very solid body of work that I highly advise everyone take a minute and get involved in. I am a little bummed to see that it's going to be a Unicron thing that kind of wraps it all up. I just feel like that's kind of the blueprint go-to situation for Transformers. And what I loved about IDW, especially in Phase 2, is they've done everything but follow the blueprint. Everything. But, of course, I'm going to read it and won't pass judgment on it until I've read it. James Roberts is incredibly talented, so I do have faith in the man. Where is it going to go from here? My buddy Greg thinks maybe Beast Wars. I personally think they'll just go back to the tried and true bread and butter of good guys versus bad guys, Autobots versus Decepticons, maybe start on Cybertron before the voyage to Earth, etc., etc. I think they'll just go back to the tried and true blueprint, which is a little bit disheartening for me because of how far they've pushed the envelope to date. But once again, we're speculating. We don't know. Could be something totally different. I think another thing that bothers me with the idea of going to Beast Wars is that another thing that's been pretty cool about these IDW books is that all that stuff kind of exists within universe. The Beast Wars characters, Armada, Cybertron, all that stuff, like it all kind of exists at the same time, character-wise. The Hasbro main line is said to get away from kind of the traditional G1 next year as well. So I can imagine that whatever the Hasbro main line does, the IDW books will probably follow suit. Business-wise, making one hand wash the other and then both wash the face kind of makes sense to me, for better or worse. I think that all good things come to an end, and I'm happy to see that this chapter is closing up before it has a chance to be run completely into the ground. I think that we as a fandom should be grateful for the amount of work that they've published, for the amount of great artists that have contributed, most notably Alex Milne, who's arguably the best Transformer artist of all time, or at least that we've seen in a mainstream format. Nick Roche, Andrew Griffith, wonderfully complicated, intertwined writers like James Roberts and Barber take control of this entity and really mold it into something new, fresh, innovative, and yet familiar to our nostalgic love. So I want to thank all the gentlemen that have worked on those books over the years. I've enjoyed far more than I haven't. It's made me love characters I've never cared about and made me love new characters, which for me is a big deal because I probably haven't fallen in love with a Transformer character since G1, because I'm just that guy. And I also think that subsequently in regard to the toys, some of the best stuff that we've got from Hasbro, like that Springer for instance, has been the old tried and true formula for Hasbro Transformers for generations. And that is to say, let the fiction dictate the toys. When Hasbro has tried to do the opposite and allow the toys to dictate the fiction, it's only had a negative impact on both. So if they get some talented people to work on this reboot, and it becomes successful in the same way that this stuff was successful, allow the creators to touch the hearts of the fans and make them care about characters that then Hasbro, you can produce as toys and we will support it. That's how this works. Traditionally. Here's hoping. Fingers crossed. I highly advise you guys to check these books out. Don't allow naysayers with absurd criticisms to prevent you from checking them out. If you read them and they're not for you, that's one thing. But they're definitely worth your time to at least experience. If you can watch the Bayformers, you can definitely make your way through these. So thanks again to all those gentlemen that have participated. Whether I've enjoyed the books personally, whether they were good, bad, or ugly, I think all of it as a body of work has helped push this franchise forward in a fresh, new, creative, and unique way that we're not used to seeing from this IP. So my hat's off to you gentlemen. Thank you for your contributions. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.